Public Works and Fire Station Ad Hoc Committee, regular meeting, October 22nd, 2019, 3:30 p.m.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the Public Works and Fire Station Ad Hoc Committee regular meeting, October 22nd, 2019, approximately 3:30 p.m. Would everybody stand and join me in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. The pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda number 3, public comments, citizens' comments. Open the floor for anybody who has any comments they wish to make. Hearing none. We'll move on to agenda number 4, approval of the site plan being presented by Bowman Consulting.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Giuliano. I'm with Bowman Consulting. I figure I'll just kind of go over the site plan a little bit and also the drainage, and then if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Perfect.
Let's see here. So as you can see here, this is the Public Works building right here, and this is the lobby area. So this area will be constructed as part of the first phase, along with all of the infrastructure, parking, and everything else. And I think the idea is to leave the fire station a pad-ready site with utilities stubbed to it, and just kind of ready for building construction when the time comes. We have two ingress-egress on Jackson. We'll be sharing this with the school over here. We have a potential cross-access with Publix behind us. I think the city's working on that now. And also we have a sidewalk for pedestrian access from Jackson back to the Publix shopping center. Also, we have a couple of electric charging stations. That's pretty much the highlights, and I can answer any questions. In order to maximize the site, the city asked us if we could kind of do something off-site for the drainage. So the city is now working with the school board to get an easement, I think more than a couple of easements, but for the sake of this, an easement where that ball field is just right down near Pineapple, and the school board will allow us to dig a wet pond there. So the idea is, and we've done some calculations, and it looks like it works. This is the Public Works building here. We're going to modify some of these inlets and bring our water down to here into this pond. We'll have to add a couple structures near the pond and a pipe. But also, as part of this, when we do our calculations, it looks like we can lower the max stage, the max stage flood water on Jackson and Pineapple, where it floods there, by about half a foot. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. There's some weirs in here. We'll have to knock out some weirs, and we'll be treating some of the water from Jackson Street in this pond as well as our site, but it looks like it's going to work out pretty well for the city, I think. So that's pretty much the highlights. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
It would be a wet pond then?
It'll be a wet pond, yes.
Any social amenities around it, or just a pond?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but yeah, I'm sure we've talked to the city. There's going to be plantings around there, and it'll be nice.
I have some questions, and I'm not sure if I ask you or wait till we get to the architecture part, but there are 6 parking spaces designated in front of the Public Works section. Who are those parking spaces intended for?
I mean, I would just guess Public Works employees.
Is Alan not here? Oh, there he is, okay.
I mean, I think at this stage, really, it was fit as much parking on the site as we can. I don't know that we're looking at, kind of who's going to be parking where. And one other thing I did leave out is that there's a storage area here for Public Works, where they can store equipment, and there's talk of maybe a fuel tank there. And there's also a possibility of turning that into additional parking as well, if they decide to store their equipment somewhere else.
Here's something that occurred to me when I first saw this architectural plan. There is no designated parking in front of the fire station, understandably so. And I think it goes without saying that people who want to go into the fire station, for whatever reason, are going to be parking there in front of Public Works, because it's the only parking.
Well, I think the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think trucks will be pulling through the building, both in Public Works and in the fire station.
Also, weren't there several parking spots on the west side of the fire apron? I thought there was a handicap there.
There is.
Plus a couple of others.
Yeah.
There is on one of those renderings, it shows a handicap
On the,
spot.
at the front.
On the front, there's one up there, right?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes,
couldn't-
right there.
Here's my concern. When I looked at this conceptual thing here, a number of things jumped out at me, like where are people going to park? Who is this parking for if it's intended just for Public Works? There must be something out here for the public to understand that they're not supposed to park there.
And I think you would accomplish that with signage, more so than anything else.
Okay, where do you anticipate that the public would park to go into the fire station?
I mean, I anticipate that they would be parking back here and over here.
You're going to have parking in front of those bays.
They're on this side.
I know, but
Right
traffic is,
here, yeah.
traffic is going to go in there to park there, and what if a truck needs to come out?
Yeah, go
Do you
ahead.
see my point?
The only thing that I'd like to add is that the way the architecture is designed is a central lobby that serves both sides of the building. And so the parking that we have in front of Public Works is really to get into that central lobby.
Okay.
It just happens to be on the Public Works side of the building because they don't require the egress directly through with their trucks straight out onto Jackson Avenue.
So then, it's not going to be a concern to Public Works if people wanting to go into the fire station park in front of Public Works? Yes.
Those are not parking spaces.
No,
Right, and so
down at the
these,
parking places, yes.
okay.
So that's my question to Alan. Is
I
that,
think it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge here through the whole time has been to get as much parking on the site as possible. So we're just kind of putting it everywhere it fits. And, maybe if it becomes an issue somewhere on the site, we could use signage to keep people from parking there. But I think that that's something that can be, worked out when after you see how the site flows.
so these were issues that I noticed immediately, and as long as they are addressed, that's fine. But, obviously we need to be careful about not blocking the fire bays.
Yes.
And,
So the assumption I'm making is on the backside of that building is basically where all the employee parking is, for lack of better direction, right? So on the backside is where the fire department and the Public Works employees would park, and basically up front is really visitor parking.
Okay.
That-
As,
and
as
you-
long as this is made clear to the public, I have a concern about somebody coming up to the fire station, they don't know if they're having a heart attack, they're scared, they're nervous, oh my God, where do I go, what do I do?
They do
We
that
just
today.
can't have that.
There's no, I mean, then they should pull their car right into the bay. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's an emergency. I mean, I don't know really where else to put parking, you know, because the Public Works, I mean, they would prefer to have more parking, actually. And we're putting our stormwater off-site, we're putting parking everywhere there's a spot for it. And then I think if it becomes an issue, when operations are happening, I think you could do things with signage to keep certain spaces open if that becomes an issue.
I,
Wait a minute, John.
when you're done.
Hang on. I noted at our last meeting, we talked about needing at least 38 parking spaces, and counting front and back here, I counted 35.
I think we got 40. Yeah, we have 40. This site plan right here, we have 40 spaces.
Okay.
Are you done, Lorraine?
Yeah, as long as there is adequate signage to let people know, you know, without having to look all over the place and wonder what they should be doing or
Yes,
going.
ma'am.
So, a suggestion as a talking point. I noticed that on the north side of the fire station, it's a backup generator. If you were to swap that in the parking, in other words, put parking there and put the generator in the front of the building, I know that supposedly is unaesthetic, but I'm sure you could put a wall around it or something. Then you wouldn't have the problem. If you blocked an engine, it's coming into the bay, not going out. There is no way to park there at all. In other words, you'd have to basically tell people, this is a no-go zone.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some flexibility with the generator location. I mean, it's, you know, we got, you know, parking over here and generator, so I mean, you know, I understand what you're saying.
You know, that was just a thought, but then again, if you do that and eliminate all parking on the apron, then if somebody is stupid enough to go there, you know they're blocking.
Right.
So it's a trade-off, and I've got no idea how you weigh the options.
So let me ask this question, Chief. What happens now at the fire station? Someone shows up thinking they have an emergency or they want to come in. Where do they park now? Or where, because obviously I know your parking lot's not that big over there.
So two things happen. Either they pull up in front of the bays where they pull now, or they come around to the parking lot and come into the front of the station. If they pull up to the front of the bays and the bay doors are down, they've got to walk around to the front of the station because there's no way for us to know that they're at the front of the bay area now. So typically, if those doors are down, they're going to come around to the parking lot area of the station.
So realistically, I don't see it as being any different. It's the same case.
Except that parking area to the side of your building is very obvious.
To the north side of our existing building, yes.
Yes.
I think the best thing, again, like the best thing you can do to alleviate stuff like this is signage.
Right.
You know, maybe you know, when the time comes and the fire station's built, we've got as many spaces in there as we can, and we can direct people to where it makes sense through signage.
Dave, just to put you on the spot,
Thanks.
if at this point you had a choice between no parking next to your apron or that very limited parking, do you have a preference?
In those, are you talking about those three spaces that
Yes.
they're showing on? I think if you asked me a preference, I would limit that parking to being staff and administrative vehicles only of the fire department. That would be the preference. I know that we have talked about that being a handicap spot, and that we are not looking for people to be walking across from the front of the bays. Handicapped people to be crossing across the front of the bays by parking there. So I think that if we had a preference, it would be to make it administrative fire vehicles only.
I think that's something that can be done.
Would you prefer that to having the parking there instead of on the north side? And have the apron, a pure apron with no parking?
I don't know that we've got the flexibility to eliminate three spaces.
No, you wouldn't eliminate. You would, the generator is now at the northwest corner of the building.
Correct.
If you move the generator to the southwest corner of the building and move the parking to the northwest.
So if you see that square right there by the 3 parking places, that square is a training tower. And if we put the generator there, we're gonna lose usable space right there to train around that tower.
Okay, okay.
So if we make those 3 spots administrative, we have better control over them when we're gonna train.
Plus, if you want to do something like
Ladders.
pull something, ladders or something, you can tell somebody, no, you're not parking here.
Right.
Okay,
I would tend to agree with the chief. Usually, been my experience, usually a couple spaces up front is usually there for the fire chief and everybody who's going to, if he's there, respond when the fire trucks pull out, which means he's going to pull out with them. It would certainly be better that he's sitting up front and pulling out with the fire trucks instead of being parked behind the fire station, driving either around it or through the bay behind them. In most cases, and I can say this because I was at the Cape Fire Department today teaching training, and you're right, all the staff vehicles are parked right up front near the entrance where they pull out when fire responds in the same spot. That would make perfect sense as opposed to parking in the back.
So I'll talk to the city and Public Works about where to move that handicap space, where it makes sense, and I'll talk to Greg as well from an architectural standpoint where it makes sense, and we'll
And I
get that
can
out of
agree.
there.
I think signage can be put at the
Yeah.
front of their, say, visitor parking here.
Yeah, that's all you can do, really. I mean, it's, usually it works.
Follow up on that.
You know.
So Chief, to kind of follow up on that same topic, for the walk-in medic access on this site plan, how would you envision it working? Walk-in medic access.
I think somebody that's coming in looking at this, I think somebody that's coming in with a medical need, a medical emergency, is probably going to pull up in front of the bays.
Okay.
I think that's, there's just, I'm putting myself in the person that's needing help, I'm driving down the road, I see the fire station. We've had it happen in our building now, where it goes both ways. People that are familiar with us, they will pull into the parking lot. People that are not familiar, we've had people drive from Rockledge Fire Department, drive from the city of Rockledge to get care from Savage Fire Department. But because they weren't familiar, they pulled right into the front of the bays. So I think really familiarity, from a familiarity standpoint, we'll pull in the parking lot, and a medical emergency, unfamiliar, is going to pull right in front of the bays.
And where in this parking lot would they pull if they're familiar with where to go? Where would you like to see them go?
They would just they would just probably pull into the Public Works area parking place and park somewhere around that indicated handicap spot on the southwest, on that southeast parking area.
And internal to the building, where's the facility to
treat them?
treat them? Thank you.
Well, now they're going to walk back, if I remember the floor plan, they're going to walk back to the back of.
It's toward the center of the building.
Toward the center?
Toward the center of the building in both directions.
the center of the lobby area.
I remember right.
It's probably good having that lobby there.
There's also a
People
door
pull
in
up
the
out
back
front
too,
and
so
go right
you
to
can
the
come in
lobby.
through the back.
Don't give it away.
So, on the floor plan, people can enter that lobby from the rear parking lot as well. And so the medical treatment room is right in the center of the building, both north, south, and east, west. Right? It's right in the middle of the building.
So Chief, how many who you're treating today, what's a rough ratio of people, your repeat customers?
So let's talk about our customers first. Our typical customers are sharps containers, blood pressures, sometimes directions, not very often, but those are our 2 biggest ones. And then everybody else that needs a treatment, doesn't feel good, wants something there, is that. I would say that we're probably seeing a sharps container, we probably see 5 to 6 sharp containers a day, probably 3 to 4 blood pressures a day, and probably 1 to 2 treatments a week of somebody coming in with some sort of a medical complaint.
So with
Round numbers, 10 a day then.
Yeah,
So with the rear access that was just talked about, could you envision a site or something in the back that has a designated kind of a place where your repeat customers kind of know they need to go into the back and go through the back doors? Would that help?
we could do it in a sense as long as we're not getting them in and around the activity of the Public Works work that's going on back there. That would have to be something Alan would speak to, whether he would really want to see the public going back in that area.
Or they're going down Delora Court?
Well, that's over a day, too, so you're talking an hour on a rough basis.
I guess what I'm driving at is we have, there's spaces between the bays if we got creative and we have our repeat customers, which takes down some of the traffic up front, but they know to park into the back. Is there anything we can do back there? And perhaps this might be a little bit of a segue. I know you touched, John, you touched on the generator. Why was that spot picked for the generator?
I'm not sure why that spot was picked. I think it's probably because it was a good spot for it as far as where we were. You can't really fit, if you put parking here where the generator is, you've got, it's not the last worst thing in the world, but you have cars coming in here, you have kind of people backing up and right into that drive aisle. So we sort of usually try to avoid that, if we can put it somewhere else.
Is there a reason why the generator cannot be put next to the facility to be blocking it from the storms? Put the generator in the side yard where that sable palm is?
I don't have to say, but you're saying right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that would, if that is the.
It's protection from
Yeah,
storm.
I don't see a problem with that.
And that would free up that area for perhaps.
Possible parking if it was desired.
Now, that there, if you freed that area, you could do the same thing you have next to the apron. Instead of backing out into the aisle, they pull in and back out into the access to the bays. In other words, if the parking spaces ran east-west.
I don't think you can do that. I don't think you want to do that.
Not enough space.
There's not going to be a bunch of high-speed stuff going on here, so, you're still, if you're talking about getting into the building, you're still talking about somebody parking here and walking across this to get into there. It's because this is really, it's a yard, basically, an industrial area where there's going to be a lot of trucks, fire trucks, work trucks. You're going to have the public mixing with that,
So I would look at it this point. Obviously, staff has been, for the last week or two, having these discussions and talking about how the site plan is set up and the way everything's going. From that point of view, whether we need to get down to talking about a parking space or two, or moving a handicap spot, the site plan allows for a lot of options at this point. Without trying to change that, when we're talking about, 40 parking spots in here, what we call them, I would say you put them in there and trial by error. Once we get in there and everybody gets moved in, we can obviously address.
And this is all good, this is all good conversation for them to hear and for us to hear, and maybe because we have run this by, Fire and Public Works, and maybe, it's good to get more ideas, but it's not a hassle to, like you said, move a parking space or move a generator at this point. But it's going to be basically like this, there's not a whole bunch different you can do there.
I just say that from that point, like I said, Chief, Alan, do you have any issues as you see, as is this, other than, I would say, some tweaking, moving some here or there? Do you see any main issues with what you have right now?
We'll make it work.
I always say, you can sit here and say, what if? What if 4 people pull in front of the base? What if someone pulls in front of Public Works and then has an emergency? What if 2 people pull in at the same time? You can always have a lot of that, but and I agree partially with you is, someone unfamiliar with the place is going to pull up in front of the building somewhere and go seek help.
Right.
And I personally believe that if I'm having a medical emergency, I'm not reading no visitor sign, handicap sign, don't block door, I'm not reading nothing. I'm going to go seek help and get the help that I need. I would tend to agree, as the chief said, if you're someone who's bringing a sharps container every week, after the first time or two, you probably know where to park, right? I'm sure the people that are coming on a regular basis, as they do now, as the chief said, they know they'll park in the parking lot. I would say the same thing is going to happen for Public Works. If someone's coming there to see Alan, probably after the first time or two, they'll they'll know where to park and where to go. And I certainly wouldn't want to drive out back where all the trucks are all over the place out there if I'm coming to visit from that point. But as I would say, as long as everybody is tentatively happy with the way it's sitting right now, I think it allows for some tweaks and some movement going forward. I don't see any huge objects in the way that can't be overcome or moved at this point.
Yeah, I mean, after this, if they want to move a parking space or two, it'll be minor, you know.
How about moving the generator?
Again, the same thing. Right now, it's just
Right now, it's a picture, but.
right,
we're
yeah,
here-
if they, you know, if they and the architect think that that's a good idea, you know, I don't know where the power's coming into the I don't, you know, I would say, yeah, you're right, I can move it, you know. I would want to talk to everybody, the fire department, and make sure that it was a good idea before I did it.
Yeah, and let me just, I think that it's possible to move the generator from here to directly on the west side of the building. We have room between the property line and that side of the building. So it's possible we can look at adding a parking space here or two, if possible. And moving this generator to
Even
the
without
side of the building.
parking, it would seem to me it'd be
To put it behind
preferable
the
to have
building.
it snuggled
Yeah, I get
against it.
that.
Even if the wind is coming out of the west at 100 miles per hour, having that building there is going to shelter the generator. It's going to break the wind field.
And then how long ago, I mean, I guess, is it a diesel generator?
It will be a diesel generator.
Does it need to be close to parking or close to roadway so they can fuel it?
Ideally, yes.
So there's a few things we need to look at, but, you know, I don't think it's insurmountable. You know, we may actually have to, if we move it here, we may actually have to throw a couple spaces in there so they can get close enough to put diesel in it.
Alan, I'd like to pick on you for a few minutes. What vehicles, what equipment is not going to be undercover with this plan?
Well, I don't see a lot of, like, maybe some pickup trucks. The bigger stuff would be inside, dump
Okay,
trucks.
back truck will be in there.
Back trucks inside, the backhoe will still be located down at DeSoto.
Okay, now, this building should be here 50 years from now, right?
Right.
50 years from now, DeSoto Field may not be very usable.
We also have space backhoes, like hovering.
True. True.
Well, at that point, then we have to rethink where we're gonna put the backhoe. But for now, I mean, we're limited with space. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Now,
So-
the storage yard, in the future, I guess, if you wanted to, you could turn that into a sheltered building instead of a yard.
Yep. I mean, there's all, you know, different possibilities there in that back corner. And there's some room to move a couple things around maybe, get the diesel tank closer to the generator so that, you know, the issue of tanking it up every
Right.
week is not an issue as far as having the diesel tank in one spot and the
Oh, you've got
generator
the
in
tank
another.
back in the northeast corner?
Closer to where the generator is, but I mean, that's all details that need to be worked out logistically. I mean, for now, I think the site plan as it is works. You know, the parking issue of where somebody's gonna park and things like that. You know, I have a full parking lot with signs out front that say, you know, public works parking only, 7 to 3:30, and ask the moms that park there to take their kids to the tot lot next door, did they see the sign? So, you know, it is what it is, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be. We're gonna do our best to make sure that we manage this properly, but we're getting what we can out of this property, I think.
I mean, I just say, yeah, it'd be great if we had a lot more property and we could build everything a lot bigger, but that's not the case. Case is, this is as big as it's gonna get, that's the size of the lot.
If we had to do stormwater on this lot, you'd be losing,
Yeah.
you know,
True. If we had to do
20% of
stormwater under,
it.
you'd lose a lot
You have
more.
to do it underneath.
Yeah, you'd go under, and that's obviously expensive, you know, so.
What risk do we have with the stormwater drainage going off-site?
Really, I think it really creates a lot better situation for the flooding on Jackson. I mean, I don't think that there's, we've met with St. Johns River Water Management District twice. We've gone over our calculations with them. So we really, before we brought this to you guys, we really wanted to make sure that, you know, it was going to work, because we wouldn't want, you know, a bad situation out there that we were
We don't wanna make it
responsible.
worse.
Yeah, yeah, and in Jackson, we know that there's an opportunity there to hopefully alleviate a lot of that flooding. So yeah, that was another goal of the city that.
Well, that's important too,
Yeah.
because if there's enough water on Jackson, I don't think the fire department's going to want to respond down that street.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the water, there's water in those inlets, you know, down there right now. The water table's pretty high in that area, but I think this is the best case scenario for all of that.
You mentioned the sidewalk down the east side. In the site plan now, how wide is it?
5 feet right now.
We're working with the dentist office on a partnership for the sidewalk.
Okay.
So, in fact, the mayor had lunch with the dentist.
I think part of our discussion was we want it wide, but we don't want it so wide that someone's going to try to drive a golf cart or something down it.
We wanted to be attached.
Wait a minute now. I
Yeah,
thought,
it'd be
I
nice
thought we
if
had,
two
a-
bicycles could pass each.
Yeah.
I thought we had a desire to have golf cart access to the back of Publix.
Well, they've got it.
We don't
They
want to
could
do it on this
now
side?
through the schools.
It's not what I said. The city wanted to control access.
Well, I think with the meandering sidewalk and the planting around it, it's
isn't the
more of a
opportunity
pedestrian
for it?
feature, you know?
This isn't the opportunity to try to get a sidewalk wide enough, working with the dentist office?
Well, we could certainly take a look at that. That's not what we talked about though. So, I mean, nothing's off the table. I don't know how wide of a sidewalk you need for a golf cart. And then if you have a golf cart, two golf carts, one going one way, one coming the other, how wide does it have to be?
I mean, you see how big a 5-foot sidewalk looks in there? I mean, I don't know, golf cart maybe 12-foot
Yeah.
sidewalk or something, that'd be honestly more than double that size. So you would lose the opportunity for a lot of the buffering that Sue's proposing.
What
That-
about
I would
lights?
say that's a topic for a whole nother day. Not everybody in this city shares a passion for golf carts.
So we're here to review a site plan. So it's a topic for today,
Right.
because we are looking at a site plan. And my proposal is that we consider it.
I'm all for that.
Okay, and that's kind of what we're doing, is our job is to nitpick this.
Consider what? Finish your sentence.
Consider the ability to have a sidewalk that's wide enough to give us access for golf carts.
Right, and
into
we're
Publix.
just, you're telling me, and I'm just telling you guys the pros and cons, and
Right.
it's up to the city if they would want to do that, and it certainly is easy for us to put it in there.
Yeah.
I guess I assume they'd be coming in around by the lower court and coming around that corner up there.
If we can get access in there,
That's what it looks like, an access point.
if we can get in there. Right now, we don't, and we can't control that.
And I know you brought up lighting. I mean, that, again, that'll be, once the site plan is dialed in, we would do a photometric plan. We would meet city requirements, whatever they wanted. Usually it's 0 lumens at the lot lines and things like that, and whatever type of lights they want to spec. So that's kind of just something that happens.
Actually, there was a throwaway comment very early. You see the entrance from the west, and then you go north, that the idea the city's talking about having that as access to Atlantic Plaza. That would take care of golf carts right away,
If we can get that.
if that works. And I guess I'm inclined to say, I'm happy with the plan. I believe the plan will work the way it is. Now, we brought up some ideas, move the generator, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm not ready to say I really want that done. I'd be inclined to say, we're okay with it. We've got a list of some ideas, and let the city decide which of those ideas they like and which they don't, and move on.
How about dumpster access, for lack of words?
This is the dumpster right back here. And we've run truck routes with a garbage truck to see if they can get in there, and we've run truck routes with the fire trucks and you know, in AutoCAD, and usually those are very conservative models, and if you can do it on the computer, you can easily do it in a truck, so we have made sure that that works.
I have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
Unrelated. It says, it indicates a place for flag poles, plural, and I was wondering how many we need.
Well, it's probably just one. I mean, we just wanted the option there for multiple, if you guys wanted that. Yeah.
Well, we have two out front now, so,
Okay.
this building. Actually, we have three flags.
Right.
On separate poles?
Yes.
Yes.
So when you go out to your car, you'll see the state of Florida, the U.S. flag, and then another U.S. flag over by the gazebo.
Which is what I've seen too. Usually you'd have the U.S. flag, you'd have the state flag, and then a lot of times the fire department will have a flag
Right.
on the other pole. I mean,
Three there,
that's
so
what I
we-
saw today, actually, at the fire station. That's what they had. They had
We did put
state
three,
of
so-
Florida, the U.S. flag, and the fire department had a flag
On one pole?
on one pole.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, 3 poles. There's regulations for poles. If you have a U.S. flag, the U.S. flag has to be higher than the other flags that are below it. There's a precedence in the way that
State
whole
next.
works. Yep, state next. There's a whole precedence in the way that goes. So usually that's why they're on separate poles out there.
David's personal flag.
My fire department flag,
Yeah.
where's the fire department public works flag? Public works is
All
back.
three, yes.
Dave's personal flag would be on top.
I'm sure of that.
When we left our last meeting, we were really concerned about parking spaces. And using Google Earth, I counted 19 at the fire station and 14 at Public Works, looking at only the middle area. And I know there's 9 right on the police. I wasn't counting those. That's 33 spaces we have today. You came up with a plan of 40 spaces. That's very commendable. I mean,
Thank you.
we were
Appreciate it.
we were very concerned, at least we need
Yeah,
to
well-
get to where we're
And
currently.
again,
at.
if something different happened, like if the Public Works gets in there and they're like, oh, man, you know what, we can store our stuff off-site, we sure would love to have some more parking, this is set up to where you just would have to stripe it. You know, but they probably want a storage yard, but it's up to them.
So with the 7, actually 14, I guess, that you have in the back lot in the middle, that create an island,
Yeah.
depending on what you do with the storage yard, you can actually increase that size if you needed to.
Yes, sir.
Alan, where in this building is the site plan, is the equivalent of what's your workshop, the old rec building?
Those shops that we use now, basically a break room and carpenter shop, and the signs are all going to be located in the main building. If you look at this drawing here, they'll be on the
east side?
east side of the back truck area. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
In this area here,
Underneath.
that's where all the shops
under
are
the,
located.
air conditioning.
Okay. But the entrance is through the bays then?
Well, I talked to Greg about possibly adding some roll-down doors on the backside so that we can access, we're building big things that we can move them out the back that way without having to move vehicles around and things like that. So I think he was working on getting some better access through the backside.
The only downside to that is that now you're putting openings in the east side of the building, the windward side of the building.
As long as we have hurricane-rated doors, I think we'll be fine.
You guys okay with the site plan?
Any other questions on the site plan?
I agree with John. It will work. The outstanding thing is that generator location. I don't like it out in the open like that.
I move that we accept the site plan, giving folks the leeway to make adjustments involving things like we talked about, moving the generator, adding doors on the east side, parking spots, whatever else. In other words, in general, it works. And I don't feel they need to come back to us if they want to add doors on the east side or move the generator or anything else.
So I have a motion to conceptually accept the site plan, this site plan as is.
With the caveat that they're free to change it without having to come back to us and Mother May on it.
I mean, and as you, honestly, as you get into the engineering, I mean, there's going to be small things that change. You know, nothing major. This is largely what it's going to look like. We may add a parking space here and there if the city wants it. We'll probably move the generator if it makes sense, and we can get diesel to it. I mean, I think those are all good ideas. But basically, it's going to look about like that.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second.
More discussion.
Say that.
I share Mike's and others' concerns about that generator being moved to the west, and the way this motion reads is that it's up to discretion as to whether or not to move it. If we want it moved, then that should be a statement.
Well, I understand, you know, what you're saying, but there's some other logistics there that, I mean, I would say there's probably an 80-90% chance that it can be moved and it's no problem. But I hate to say, yeah, we're definitely going to move it if it turns out that, you know, because you also have to bring fuel to it. You have to get diesel to it. And, you know, so I mean, I think it'll probably be moved. I just hate to promise it up here, you know.
What I
under-
would say too is, I would say you got to make sure by building code, and can you put it so close to a building that's one that size?
Setbacks, everything else.
Is there any other drainage, or is there other rules that, I mean, I agree, that's where we'd want it, but.
So could we add
Wait,
to?
I can amend that motion
Before you do
to
that.
say we would prefer, but not make it hard.
Well, I like the way the motion is, but I would like to say in the motion or amend the motion that any changes to the site plan without our board looking at it has the blessing of both department heads. Both department heads agree to the change.
Okay. That's fair. I'll accept that as an amendment.
So that's the amendment. Do I have an amended second? Got that? Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like for the minutes to show what specifically the topics were that we discussed, so that there is a record of.
So Lorraine, I was going to go through, my takeout is the generator location is important, that we look at moving it to the west. Signage for the parking spaces as we get into the development to see what that looks like. The walk-in medic access, take a look at that. To look at the corridor on whether or not we can make this wide enough for golf carts. You know, I don't know what the rules are, but we will definitely look into that. The bay doors for Alan's access to his storage and his workshops.
Slow down, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bay doors, what?
On the back of Public Works.
On the east side.
I would say that the sidewalk issue goes away if that vehicle access comes to be.
Right. You mean on the west, on this side?
In other words, if you go up to the northwest corner of the lot, there's a little road that ends at the property line.
Right, and that's fenced right now.
Yeah.
Of course, because that's owned by
But
Publix.
if the city,
We're working with Publix right now to see if we can get access from there.
if that happens, the issue about the sidewalk goes away because golf carts can go
On that road.
that road.
Those are all things that we're working out. So, a lot of moving parts.
What?
There's a lot of moving parts, because we're still working with the school board too on
Did
the,
you get all those?
Yep.
All right.
you guys good with the drainage too?
You need.
Everything good with the
Can you hear me?
drainage?
Is this on?
Drainage, everything okay with the drainage?
Okay.
All right.
Hello.
So any other discussion? Is that, everybody good with that? I'll open it up for public comment on that. If anybody's got any further to add? Hearing none. Any further discussion? No? Grace?
Mike Chase,
Yes.
Lorraine Gott,
Yes.
David Shector,
Yes.
John Fergus,
Yes.
and Steve Osmer.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. Unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to the architects now, so.
Thanks for all the work.
Yes, thank
Appreciate
you.
that. All right, agenda number 5,
You said everybody warmed up now, so.
talk about the landscape architecture.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Hall, and I have a handout. I didn't bring a,
Yeah, I had my magnifying glass on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yay.
Oh, now I can actually read the different plants.
Yes.
oh,
Have to get my
She
phone
got
out
mine.
to
Susan,
magnify.
she got mine.
right now?
She doesn't need it.
Okay.
All right. So what you have before you is our conceptual landscape plan for comment. And one of the things we tried to do is to introduce a little bit more shade along the public sidewalks, both on Jackson Avenue and leading up the east side of the site, where the current 6-foot wide walkway is. And to the right on the sheet that you're looking at is a photograph of the plant palette that we're proposing for the site. So at the top, you see we have a combination of trees and palms, sand live oaks, sable palms, some saw palmetto, and then some smaller trees, the Simpson stopper and the Florida privet. The green buttonwood that you see on that bottom line of the trees and palms, that's a very good resilient performer. So that would be a good, we felt in addition to the sand live oak, that would be a good choice for a shade tree. Also, another palm that we haven't shown on here that we can talk about today, if you'd like to break up the types of palms that we have, because right now we're only proposing cabbage palms on the site, would be to use some of the Florida thatch palms. Also very nice native palm, salt tolerant, appropriate for this location. So, under the shrubs and the grasses, you see there, we have the sand cordgrass, the dwarf ilex, Stokes dwarf, pink muhly grass. For our hedges, we're proposing that we're using silver buttonwood, which we feel will make a very good hedge. Other things that make good hedges are Florida privet, green cocoa palm, although we're not proposing those at this time. And for some color, some dwarf firebush. So, then down at the bottom of the sheet, you see the ground covers and the vines, and that's a mix of our native ground covers, the blanket flower, the gin sunflowers, the Florida coonties, which are a real good performer, we have found. Golden creeper, which the shot that you have, the photo that you see there of the golden creeper, it's not trimmed, but recently I was down in Key West, and the fire station down there was done all in native planting, and golden creeper was one of the ground covers used in the parking lot, and they had kept it trimmed as about a 8 or 10 inch ground cover, and it looked very nice, and sunshine mimosa. So if I am to walk you through the plan, beginning at the Jackson Avenue, the front walk where it meets the public walk, to your left and right, those long serpentine lines that you see that also continue up the side property lines, those are your silver buttonwood hedges. And we were concerned about keeping a a good open view for a fire truck leaving the station. So pulling out, and in particular, having that view over the shoulder to the east, over the driver's shoulder to the east, wanting to keep that open so whether they're making an east turn or a west turn, they have the visibility that they need. And then we have some shade trees on the, 3 shade trees across the front of the front property line, and some smaller trees closer to the center. As you go up the east property line along the 6-foot wide walkway, we've got a combination of smaller understory trees, some groupings, a grouping of some taller cabbage palms of different heights, a couple of sand live oaks, some saw palmettos, and our silver buttonwood hedge. So, and around the equipment yard in the northeast corner, we're proposing using on the fence line a native coral honeysuckle through there. Across the rear property line at Publix, where it abuts Publix, we wanted to keep things simple there and not, easy to maintain. So that's a combination of cabbage palms and some understory trees. Below that, we just have Bahia sod through there. And then coming down the west property line, we have a combination of understory trees, cabbage palms, coonties, muhly grass, and ilex coming all the way down. We know that we have some changes to make based on the conversation earlier with the generator, and also Greg has informed me that the tower there will be used for rappelling, so we'll have to create a clear zone at the base of that, which we will do. So I welcome your comments and questions. And
Go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Got a question a little bit late, but on the little islands in the parking, the 2 islands,
yes, in the rear.
are they going to be basically swaled so water collects in them? There's no reason not to, is there?
No, one of them has a fire hydrant in it, the one that we left open. So we left that open for purposes of practice and need to get to that. And then the east island, we have a couple of smaller species trees in there so that we don't create a problem down the line with roots on trees.
Because I believe Alan, quite a while ago, made comments in this parking lot here. They have raised curb around there, and they could have basically, made it so they, instead of repelling water, they collected it.
Oh, with openings, cuts in the curb to collect.
Or whatever.
So some of the challenges with that is that we're going to have all these trucks running around in there, and the amount of, bang for your buck that you get by collecting a little bit of water in an island is, it's just,
Not worth the effort.
Significant.
yeah, it's not significant,
Okay. And I guess another observation, we have a privet hedge.
Mm-hmm.
We put it in probably 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Very healthy hedge,
Yes, they are.
which needs trimming. That thing, if I just let it go, usually trim it once a year, maybe go 2 years, it'll get close to 15 feet tall and this wide.
That's not our intent here.
Yeah, which means that's why I bring it up, because I think Public Works is going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, I would expect, we're proposing a a silver buttonwood hedge, and I would imagine that would need to be trimmed
I don't think
3
that
to
grows
4
like-
times
That
a
was the
year.
only thing about I
Mhm.
love privet, but it's a fast grower.
Yeah, we are proposing to possibly use some privet as an understory tree, a tree form of a privet.
Okay.
Or, another one we talked about earlier was the weeping ilex, the yaupon, which I like a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does look nice. Now, one comment my wife had is she's noticed, like when they recently did the Taco Bell over there, People have a habit of putting these plants in a whole lot too close. I guess they're trying to get good coverage real fast. And it seems like a waste, because you wind up having to tear them out, or they crowd each other or anything, whether, like saw palmetto. We've got saw palmetto. And that stuff will get this big around. You know, so if you plant them on 18-inch centers, you've lost yourself.
You've spent more than you need to, and
Yeah.
you've created a maintenance problem down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just an observation she had, was to.
Space
It may look
things out
a little bit
for,
sparse to start with, but once it fills in, it'll look real nice.
is that all right with,
That's the way
The
I'd like
committee?
to see it done.
okay. We've been accused of both. That's why I asked.
Or else you do it in the way, if there's some place like, let's say, Dune Sunflower, that could take, you
Takes
kind of do it
over.
halfway,
Yeah.
to say, okay, we can, Public Works after a year or two can rip some out or something like that. But
Okay.
not to make it, not to try to fill it in right away. Mike?
Susan, you were very articulate about the front of the building and assuring that we had visibility to the fire trucks when they were leaving. Particularly, you said looking east, because you don't
Yes.
have any built. Looking west, you have some sand live oaks there.
Yeah.
What's your thought about their placement? Is that going to be restrictive as far as visibility from the west side?
Well, I can take the one that we're showing, maybe 5 feet inside the property line. I could move it back or even slide it to the northwest a bit, because I do think, I think of anything we do, that is probably one of the single most important thing we do, is that we keep that visibility
Right.
open, because when that truck's coming out, it's coming fast.
Yeah, and you also need to remember,
Will be seen.
the driver sitting in a truck is not at the level of the driver driving a car. They're substantially higher. How far off the ground are you when the eye level?
Eye level?
6, 8 feet?
Yeah, okay. Well, and then the two small understory trees that we're showing there should probably even push back and possibly even become taller palms, just so you have visibility through them.
Yeah, I would think you wouldn't want canopy below probably 10 feet. If you want them to have a clear view.
Okay.
Perhaps the same thought. The one on the east side, that's just on the east of the building. I assume that's going to be access for some fairly large equipment rolling in and out of there. We know that a dump truck's going to go in and out. A dumpster truck is going to go in and out of there. Depending on how that sand live oak is trimmed, it might be a little too close to the road.
It's, that drive is 20 feet wide, and that island looks like it's about 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
So I was
Just
thinking I
something
could go to
consider-
something more columnar.
Yeah. It looks like you're making all the right decisions going through this, and you're thinking through it very well.
Okay.
Just want to make sure we can
Well-
get the big vehicles in and out of there.
Yeah,
Okay.
canopy, once the canopy gets big.
Yeah.
And near the dumpster, if you put
Makes that a
cabbage
problem.
palms there, then you don't have a canopy problem.
Right. Any other comments?
Beautiful plants.
Well, thank you. Should I touch on the sod? The choice to use some
I
sod?
saw it's all Bahia.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'd also talked with your wife about that after the last meeting, and I'm looking at that purely from a maintenance point of view. In my humble opinion, the sod is the lowest maintenance thing on this site. Where you get your maintenance is when you have big areas of mulch, and it's as though it's an invitation to the weed growth. Something's going to come up in that mulch. So by keeping the site in the areas that, keeping things sodded, I think that will be the better choice.
I agree.
Yeah, Alan, you've looked at this? Your guys are happy with it? You're happy with it?
Well, here, Alan's and I talked about, and I sent Susan an email about the cabbage palms being a little bit more of a maintenance challenge than the other plants.
In what way? I mean, just the fronds that fall, or the seed pods, or?
Both.
Well, I'm going to have that on any palm.
All of the above. And I understand the desire to stay, with natives but, you know, after a storm, you look around the city and that's all you see is palm.
Particularly cabbage
Right,
palms.
and
yeah.
so, right, and the storm drains and things like that. And, then when we trim them, to try to, mitigate that, people get upset because you trimmed them too much. They look like beaker, so.
Yeah.
So there's two schools, you let them go and you let them die, you let the palm fronds die because that's what feeds the rest of the tree, and I get all that. It's just, they are a maintenance nightmare for us when it comes to, storm time. Besides this fact of the seed pods and the rodent and, and bats and things like that, so.
But bats are good.
The bats are good, no, I don't have a problem with bats, but rats kind of freak me out. So,
So we're getting into building.
yeah. There's a whole city of them living.
Yeah,
right now.
our other choice is the Florida Thatch. It's a very nice native palm. It's well suited to the beach side.
Right.
And,
I don't know if I've ever seen a Florida Thatch palm, I'll have to look that up.
they're pretty. They have round fronds and a very slender trunk. And, they're attractive palms.
Is it a multi-truck or?
It could be a double or even a triple, but in our case, we would probably use singles.
And what does I think everybody's familiar with how the cabbage palms are, like we say, that the
Yeah.
fronds are an issue and the seed pods and stuff. What about
Well,
the
I mean, every palm has a seed pod and the fruits. That's just how they present themselves. So,
That's how they keep going.
yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I could do would be and I do understand your point on the fronds coming down in the winds and all. I deal with that at my own office too. But I could minimize the use of the cabbage palms, maybe keep them more across the rear property line and in that northwest corner. And then in other parts of the site where we've only used them maybe on the west end and the east end of the building, we could use some Florida Thatch in through there.
I'm fine with that. Like I said, I mean, they're all around the property, and all I can foresee is, after a good storm, once they're nice and established, that, we spend half the day cleaning up around our shop before we get out of the city.
Yeah.
Get out of the city.
Well, and if the generator moving as well, we'll make sure that we don't put anything near that generator that could cause a problem for it during a storm and after a storm, so.
Susan, we touched briefly on irrigation, I think at first meeting or something, maybe the need for a well. Any thoughts on our need to irrigate the plants that you picked out?
Well, what we will propose is a drip irrigation system for all of the landscape beds. And the the sod will not be irrigated. And I'll give you all a heads up, when that bahia goes down, it looks like a very bad haircut. And then it will calm down after a couple of mowings. So it's just rough when it goes down,
So Alan, you'd prefer not to use palms then?
Yeah, I like the clean palms. I like, but they're not native.
He likes the foxtails and the Christmas. But even the Christmas palms are prolific with the berries.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
But they're, they pop out, you can snap them off. I mean, in my yard, I have a bunch of them, and they're a pain, but I don't
You get
have
the
a
whole
problem.
stalk at once.
Yeah, I just pop them off.
Yeah, and with the cabbage palms, I trim mine about once every 3 years, and I just trim them to 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, like that. And that gives me a bit of a reprieve for a while until they put on a full head again. So, I don't know, I mean, do you want to limit the palms from?
No, that's up to those ones. I just want to minimize the maintenance.
Okay.
Because, we have enough maintenance around the city that we don't want to have to pay, spend a lot of time around the shop if we don't have to. And if we can catch it before they go in, then that's all the better.
Okay.
Instead of palms, you're talking about using the privet as a tree form as opposed to a hedge form?
We're considering that. When we're looking at a Simpson stopper, we're looking at privet over, I would like to see a
Now,
yaw
Simpson-
pond.
We've got Simpson stopper, and that seems to have done I don't know how they stand up, I presume okay to wind.
Those in the yaw ponds.
Privet seems to be pretty hardy that you might use those, if not entirely, at least, or you were thinking about some palms anyway, putting in, because those kind of have a vertical growth habit. Although the privet will require a bit of trimming now and then, but not every
Well,
month, but.
yeah, and nothing is maintenance-free. We can keep it as low in maintenance as we can, but everything's going to require attention at some point.
So can I just add, in our last meeting, one of the goals for the city was to create a lot more shade trees. And this was an area, because you're going to have people walking, it's, and it's going to get hot. And so I don't know if the palms, the cabbage palms, Susan, were considered the shade trees or?
Well, they're not going to shade like a big canopy tree, but they do provide shade, especially if they're in groupings.
Yeah,
So I
if
think
you
my
group
thought was
them,
if
they
we-
can do pretty well.
Yeah, so if there's some other kind of tree that you're going to look at, something that would have the same type of shade that the sable palm would have had.
Well, the green buttonwood's fairly vertical, right?
Yeah, it is, and as it gets older, though, it will open up with a canopy. It will get larger.
What's kind of a mature height and breadth?
30 by 25?
Trunk?
8 inches, 10 inches. I know where there's some that have been in the ground up on Merritt Island on a gas station, service station for about 15 years. They don't get as big as the gumbo limbos.
But even if they came down, they would be during a storm, they'd be fairly easy to cut up and move as opposed to a live oak or something.
Yes. Anything else? Any other discussions, questions, thoughts?
I'm good.
All right, well, we'll take all the comments that you have and incorporate those, and we'll keep going.
Excellent.
Okay. Greg?
Okay, we don't need a motion on
I
that?
was say, is there a motion that needs to be made, or are we just,
Are we in consensus that we're happy?
consensus, we're happy as it is with the
The comments we made?
comments and the notes?
We're supposed to approve a landscape plan, so we probably need a motion and
Okay.
approval and public comment.
So do I have a motion to accept the landscape plan?
I'll make a motion to accept the landscape plan as presented with the comments that were discussed for
I'll
consideration.
second that can we get a list of what we think those
Well, I was gonna
discussion
say,
points
we
were?
want to add the same caveat as we did the other one, that if any changes would be made, that both the fire department and public works agree upon them.
I would like that added to my motion.
Okay, good for the second also?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mike and a second by
Are we
John.
going to specify what the things that are up in the air?
Well, what I would say is, we accept for this, and any changes that are made to this are agreed upon by fire and public works.
So, and the three things I wrote down were spacing the plants out, a drip irrigation system, and some kind of something else besides the cabbage palm, or some cabbage palms, but introduce something else that's less maintenance.
And can we add the fourth thing as far as assuring visibility for the fire trucks
Yeah, oh,
exiting
yeah,
the
the
building?
visibility.
Okay,
I know you counted for that, but it was,
That works for me.
everybody good with that?
I'm good.
Open it up for public comment on the landscape plan, if anybody has anything. Hearing none, bring it back here. Any further discussion? Matt? Grace?
Lorraine Gott,
Yes.
David Shector,
Yes.
Tom Furrias,
Yes.
Mike Chase.
Yes.
Steve Osborne.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Now for the fun stuff.
So next, agenda item 6 is the approval of the architectural and colors for the fire station Public Works building.
I may save you a lot of time. That's what I like.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. So I'll walk through the way that we went about coloring this building, and really in thinking about the materials first that would make up the exterior of this building. So starting with the roof, we know that this is going to be a standing seam metal roof. Standing seam metal roofs have a lot of color options. It's a baked-on Kynar finish, uphold. It's a 30-year warranty kind of color-fast product. We looked at, for the exterior cladding of the building, we looked at various materials, settled on stucco for its cost-effectiveness. We looked at cladding some portion of this. You can imagine maybe the second floor in a fiber cement panel like hardy board that would just add to some of the detail on the exterior of the building. But just for thinking of cost effectiveness, stucco really is the most cost effective. And we felt like what we had designed here had a level of detail where it didn't really require that added cladding and really not getting much benefit for it.
Have you decided on whether you're going to use tilt up or block or?
We're really leaning toward block on this, simply because the tilt-up panels with all these openings, they require 2 feet on each side to create an opening. And so then these spaces between doors become 4 feet, then it starts to mess with the overall width of the building.
Just maybe to chase a rabbit trail. If you're going to use block, what about architectural block, like the Shector Center?
John, talking to the microphone, please.
What, if you're going to use block anyway, what about an architectural, I don't know what you call them, but the Shector Center has one that's got
Split-face block or ground-face block.
Yeah,
That's
they can
certainly
really be effective. I don't know what that does to the cost.
the thing about that is that the stucco becomes your weather-resistive barrier on the building. And with that block, you end up having to use a special mortar that doesn't absorb water, so a hydrophobic mortar between those blocks. And you have to be sure that that's installed correctly. Otherwise, those split-face block, for example, in its worst case, can become a sponge. And so we would just, a lot of times what you see with split-face block is people come back and put an elastomeric paint over the whole thing. Then you lose that natural feel of it. One of the things that we show in this option between the two, this one had stucco going all the way down. That darker gray or that medium tone gray is stucco on this one. This one we show a veneer stone, and it's simply applied over the block. But behind that veneer, we would have a bituminous damp proofing. So basically black tar on the building behind that veneer. So that's the basics on the materials. These doors, while they look kind of traditional, they're sectional lift doors like you'd have on most residential garages, fully hurricane resistant, 165 mile per hour wind resistant doors. They do have, I know that we talked a little bit about glass in the garage doors. We've seen fire stations that use full glass garage doors. There is some glass in these. It's really the only natural light that's coming into these bays. And on the rear of the building, if we don't like that, if we want to minimize that exposure, we could use solid. But somewhere, I think it's important to get some daylight into that garage. If the occupancy sensor failed and the lights don't come on, you'd want some kind of daylight coming into those bay spaces. Then I'll just kind of talk about the way that we colored this. It's a tripartite or three-part way of thinking about the building elevation, where you have a base, a body, and kind of the head color. And it's a very classical way to think about building elevations. So it's just three parts: the base, the top, and the body. And so in both cases, we do that, although in this one it's more subtle, but in this one with the veneer base and then the more bold color for the roof, there's more things that we could have added color to in here, different trim colors and so forth, but it's just, at some point, you strip all of that away, and what you're left with is usually the right kind of format for how that's laid out. So both of these have that, and you can kind of see that here, where we have this bold color along the top, the body, and then the base. The base doesn't need to go all the way across the building. The veneer stone is more expensive to add to the outside of the building, and having it at the bookends of the elevation, and in the center part where you're getting close to it, you can actually, you can touch it. It's more tactile in that space.
Actually, there's no reason, if you pick those colors, you wouldn't have to have the stone, you could just do the stucco.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
Because like the fire station is having trouble now with that veneer block, it's separating. And
it's pulling off the wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see putting a thing that, if we're building a building to last 50 years, I mean, you're only 1,000 feet from the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to use veneer. The stucco, stick with the stucco. That's my take. And if you think about it, if you look at probably 95% of the buildings in the city, at least the residential buildings, they're stucco.
True.
So this fits right in with
it's true.
The bulk of the city.
So the last thing that I would talk about is the colors themselves. And so the groupings here, these are kind of a warm grouping. These are more of a cool color grouping. Starting with the body color, the white is a cool off-white. It's a warm off-white. And so we're looking at coastal communities, what's representative of Satellite Beach. And so that was what we were going for with these. You see kind of, we did introduce a bold color here with this kind of rust color that we have for the accents here, the bollards that, protect the building from vehicles at the overhead door openings, and the solar shading along this side. You can see that's where we put those bold accents.
I would personally, again, I like the warm colors. I'm not really upset with, there's some homes in the city that have been done in the more, I'd call them Caribbean. I mean, they are bright. And so I prefer that. That's just, again, me. But
you prefer which?
Brighter.
Which do you prefer?
The blue.
The blue and yellow or whatever it is, tan at the bottom, the warmer colors. I prefer the warmer colors myself. But in the one, and that's the one that's to our left, I don't prefer having the cladding. I prefer to have just that colored stucco like the rest of it, so that you don't have the problem with structural problems eventually with that separating and everything else. Save a little money too.
Are we to pick colors out tonight? Or just?
Do you want our preference?
Yeah.
I mean,
The warm colors.
hey, how you doing, Chris?
Hey, Chris.
I prefer the one on your left, the
cool
what's it,
colors.
red. Yeah, is that the cool colors?
Yeah.
I went to Satellite High School, and we have little red, going on there, and that kind of strikes the
That
fire.
was not intentional, but
could be a little
after
more-
somebody
it could be a
said it,
little
I
more red.
realized.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to go that route, you might as well do it.
I know, I looked at the same thing and said, well, it kind of looks red, fire department, I get that, but then, I don't know, I'm not opposed to either one actually on that, as far as that goes, but, I mean, part of it is that we're supposed to make an approval of the architecture and colors for the fire station, so that's the agenda item.
What color is the school? Do we know offhand?
It's gray and.
Gray and red,
Gray and red.
so to speak. I think that's what was Chris's point is, he says that one kind of matches the school next door, although I can't picture the dentist's office at the moment, what colors that looks like on the other side of the building.
Like a mauve, right?
To me, that one on the right with the subdued colors has no personality. That's more inviting, it's friendlier, it's more in tune with our, temperature area.
Tropical.
But are we going to decide on color now? Because I have some other questions. Or what do we want to do?
What we're talking
You're the
both.
chair.
I'll say we're doing both. We're talking architecture and colors, so, I mean.
Okay, then I have some
Go ahead
more
and look at the architecture part too.
You can hold that one up.
Okay. I'll just put
Kill that one.
Don't kill it. The Democratic way of hand me that in a minute.
Okay, you want to lift? There you go. All right, you see we're over on the right-hand side, you've got Public Works in little letters, and over on the far left, you've got, I think that says Fire Rescue, but I can't tell for sure.
It does say fire rescue.
Okay. When I saw that, I first of all didn't see that. And again, I see things from a different perspective now than I did when I was young and fit and feisty. Now I'm just old and feisty. And
I was going to say, what?
No.
and your perspective changes, and you don't see as well, and I think that you should make stuff easy for the public to get to grasp. I don't know of anybody who looks up to the second floor to see the name of a building. It's always down where you can see it. So I would think that, let's take Public Works over here, should be in that big white space lower. If you look at I think it's a woman, and I think it's supposed to be an adult woman in front of the front
It is,
entrance.
it's
Okay, you can see that
5 foot,
she's just
8.5.
Okay, she's just barely taller than the colored portion at the base. So she's not going to be looking up like this. Where am I? That needs to come down, and the letters need to be bigger. The same with the fire rescue on the other side. That's up even higher than Public Works, so there's even less chance that a person like me with my vision and so forth would see that in reality. So it needs to come down under the 55, and it needs to be bigger. And
Both of them actually could take up 2 lines, fire, rescue, public works, and make the letters
big.
8 feet tall or something.
Well,
Big.
It's a fair comment, and, but the one thing that I would say in defense of this is that it's more for vehicular traffic to see who's in this building, right? Once you park your car, you should know without signage where the front door of the building is. It should be,
so
it
how
should
does
be
that
obvious to you
How does that
where-
accomplish that?
where the front door of the building is.
Yeah.
It's obvious by the architecture here, where the front door of the building is,
But
and
front door to what?
both.
Well, I'm Jane Q. Public. How do I know what's in that building? That's the point I'm trying to make. You need to put it up there so you can see it. This side is fire rescue,
Yeah.
this side is Public Works, and put it in letters big enough and low enough for the average person to see it.
I think I see what you're saying, and you drew it out very well.
Yeah.
And I think to convey what she's saying is something more like that.
Okay.
That way, everybody's getting what we're what we're talking about, because I think you drew that very well. That's why I say that.
Thank you, I'm gonna be an architect.
Well,
I think the point is what she's making is, yes, it's lower, so that even from the street, if you're driving a car, you're looking more high level right at it. And that from the street, you're far enough away, you can read it, as opposed to, and I get the point that you're right. If you're driving down the road, you're not going to see fire rescue sitting way up on top of that training tower. You may look at the training tower only because you want to know what that is up there, but.
But you are going to have some tree canopy along the street, so you don't want that to be obstructing it either. So you've got a balancing act.
There's also been conversation about a monument sign that we haven't settled on yet, to know whether or not there will be a detached sign at the end of this sidewalk, at the end of that sidewalk there, you know, at the street.
I think that might be a good idea, and you could almost put Public Works on one side and Fire Station on the other, or I don't know. But the other thing is that given the building, and Lorraine kind of pointed, where do you enter, you might want under where it says Satellite Beach, under the canopy, maybe to have in really quite large letters, entrance.
I agree with you about the fire rescue on the left above the 55, but I see a middle ground as maybe we can put that fire rescue at the same height as Satellite Beach and Public Works. So if that was to come down, and it was being in the same plane, is that something you could agree on?
You know, when you get to be my age, you're gonna see what I'm talking about.
Or not.
It just make stuff that is intended for the public easy for the public to grasp, to see, to use, to access.
And I absolutely agree with that. That has to be our goal. The building has to be universal.
And little letters
and
that you gotta
accessible.
go like this to see where am I, they don't cut it.
I agree with you.
How about, can you visualize the Shector Center sign now? What's on the building now?
Sort of.
Is that kind of what you're talking about? That's up on the second floor, you know, but the letters are what? This tall, am I right? I'm trying to guess.
You know, I don't see why this needs to be complicated. You've got a big white space on both sides of that at the level that people would see driving by, or walking in. And it solves the problem.
You get an idea, when you look at, so say the Satellite Beach sign there that's above there, you get an idea, reference, what size is that?
24 inches.
2 foot high.
So there's also standards for distance and height, and if the building was 10 times as long and 3 times as high, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to make the letters that much bigger, because your distance to view those letters is the same, right? So that's kind of.
And where are you going to put the street number?
We have not determined that yet. We have not determined that.
It's going to be more than one number, I presume. There's 2 departments.
I'd be putting one of those
Put it on the
Maybe.
mailbox.
It's projected in the sky.
Yeah, I would.
I don't have a problem with pulling text down a bit at the ends. You don't have much choice in the center there, although I do think you need to put entrance. And I would like to see them a little bit bigger than what you have there.
Okay.
8 foot maybe is pushing it, but I'm in Lorraine's league as far as.
I agree too.
Yeah. Well, look at it this way. I think it's a third of the city's population is over 65. Okay? So.
I don't want anybody driving by the fire station squinting.
Yeah.
Not on Jackson,
Having a
where we got a
crash
school
right
and kids.
there.
and all that going on in that perspective area, but that's not a time we need people slowing down trying to read the sign. It should be, I agree, very obvious.
KISS, and make it simple.
Are your safe place signs going to be going to the left or right of the door? Do you know? You know, the safe place.
Yes,
sign?
I would think it would be more on this side of the door, as this is more of the direction of the visitors.
Okay.
The night illumination of the building or the signs, is that something for our discussion, or is that?
I mean, any discuss it, any thought about that? or-
I would defer to Liz on if that's part of the discussion.
So we're in the process of getting, or hopefully getting a grant for Complete Street on Jackson. And part of that grant would include lighting from A1A all the way down to Patrick. So of course, we would incorporate it as part of this. But I don't know that we've discussed lighting on the actual site.
I mean, really just for the signage for this topic anyway.
So we can add it. I've got my running list.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, if someone's come by at 9 o'clock at night, you want to still be able to read fire department and public works, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you definitely want.
Whatever they have now is what we'll give them, and I believe it's lit up because Mike and I took the fire academy. And I could find my car and I could see, so.
It's definitely, I can tend to see that. I'm sure there'll be signage on the glass doors, I'm sure there'll be stuff on there telling you fire department to the left, public works to the right, or lobby over top of the door, or something to
Yeah,
that.
but what you want, you want to try to prevent to the degree you can. If during the day you've got bay doors open and you don't make it clear that there's an entrance, people are going to tend to gravitate to the doors, and then they're harassing the mechanic or
That's a good point.
folks and stuff. You want to funnel them to where they belong.
Some of those people just don't want to talk to Alan. They just want to go into those other folks.
Well, I think Alan made a good point too, that once people get their bearings, I mean, if you visit the fire station daily, once a week now, 1 or 2 times, you're going to know where you're going to park, you're going to know when the busy times are and avoid it, if you're retired, so.
But Liz, my concern is the people that don't go there every day, don't go there every week, and now they feel they're in a crisis.
Then they call and go to their house. They're there in 2 minutes.
You're on my wrong side here, talking to that.
If they have an emergency, they're supposed to call 911, not drive down to the fire station.
Well, some people
And they'll be there in 2 minutes.
Yeah, well.
So we'll take a look at that, I understand. I don't want people getting lost.
Well, I think most of us probably tend to agree that those signs should be lower and bigger. I won't get into, is it 36 inches, 48 inches, 3 feet, 8 feet, whatever. I think the consensus is we'd like to have it a little bit lower, a little more getting closer to an eye level or a sight where you're not stretching your neck to see it, and that they be an appropriate size. Someone could read without, because realistically, when you're driving down the road, you're going to take a glance, right? No, you don't want anybody standing there staring at the building trying to read what it says. It should be a quick glance, you can see what it says. Yes, that's where I'm going, no, I'm not.
You mentioned standards. Do the standards have I don't know what the right term is, seniors or geriatric standard? In other words, are the standards, some of them age specific, like you've got ADA and stuff?
In general, when you have a standard like that, it's intended for universal design, which includes disabled, doesn't include blind, but it includes, it's a universal design. But, with architecture, we try to accomplish some of the things that you're after without signage, but it's a point that's very well made and taken, that, if you go to a church, you know where the front door is because that's where the steeple is. And so that's, in many ways, that's what we try to do with any building, is make it obvious where that front door is. But, Mr. Fergus, you made a very good point about, you have a bunch of doors open on the front. It could be very confusing to people where that front door is.
And I
no
think
matter
since,
how much you.
okay, yeah, you mentioned architecture too, and maybe that's part of scale. You look at the size of the building, and the text is
I think they're.
Below scale,
We want
I
to show
guess
it
you'd
off
say.
anyways, right? I mean, realistically, we're proud of this building. We're proud of the folks that are in that building. We're not trying to hide, this is fire rescue and this is public works, right? I mean, really, this is going to be a very showpiece for the city. And I would venture to say, kind of like the Shector Center, we want to put it out there and show it off. So, again, it's not that I feel that we want to hide it. We want to let everybody know that that's the fire station, right? That's public works. That's where it's at, within that idea.
Would a motion that the building, whatever, designations be somewhat lower, somewhat larger?
Yes, I think that was the consensus, what we said. We'd like to see it.
Does that match? And I'm
Yeah.
trying to break this up into pieces.
I wouldn't even put somewhat lower and larger.
Right.
Okay. Also move.
And agreed upon by both department heads that are going to be
Yes,
housed in there?
yes.
And
That's,
both
let's just say
department
that
heads
is
and then
automatically every motion
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
And you need to pick a color.
Well, no, I'm doing chunks.
We can break that in half. I mean,
You're going to have to.
okay, well, let's not hold up things with that. So I have a motion from John that we agree with what we see here, with the exception that we'd like to see the lettering brought down lower and larger, and that any changes to that should be agreed upon by both fire and public works.
And an old person.
An old person.
And the other, I think the other big point that was made was the veneer on the building. I want to stay away
Okay, I
from
wanted to
veneer.
separate
Yeah,
stuff.
Okay.
we're just gonna go with,
Because somebody may not like the motion, but like one,
Right.
so let's keep the things separate.
Okay.
so that's the motion, and basically what we're talking about, that goes, we'll get to that part when we talk about the colors and stuff. So that's the motion that John made.
And I'll second that.
I got a second from Mike. Have any more discussion on that part? No, I'll open it up for public comment. Any public comment? Hearing none, no further discussion? Grace?
Norman Gott,
Yes.
David Shector,
Yes.
Chris Reed,
Yes.
Mike Chase.
Yes.
John Fergus,
Yes.
Steve Osmer.
Yes, motion passes. So let's get on to the next part, which is colors.
I move that we accept the warm colors as shown in that top thing right there.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second for warm colors. That's what we're going to distinguish that by. So, any discussion?
I'd like to know what the tenants think. They're going to live in a house that we're going to be painting.
Okay.
You'd like to know what? I
Oh,
can't.
I'm sorry, Lane. I want to know what the tenants think that are going to be living in the house that we're painting.
Alan, Chief, that's your call.
You remember what the answer is, right?
And one wants one and one wants the other.
Well, that's probably true, but I'm here to tell you, I've been here for 30-plus years, and I've been looking at that blue and the blue out there for most of those 30 years, so I'm going with the warm colors.
Which one's that, Alan, right or left?
Sorry, this is
cool.
Blue.
This is cool. This is
Oh, that's cool? I thought the blue would be cool.
You like the gray and the red?
Yeah, I know, I'm getting dark shaded right now in the rain, but I'm telling you.
Speak up.
I'm just, and the proximity to Satellite High School, it kind of gives that feel that, we're part of that community up there, the high school community. And, different things could be done there, but the teal for me is wore out. Look at the carpet.
Nice.
And your shirt.
It's a little darker.
Your skin's starting to turn too.
Okay, Chief?
So we're around red all the time, red fire trucks,
We see the red all the time. I believe I'm talking to our crews and stuff back there. We're looking at some contrast between the roof line above, even though it's the public works sign, and the doors. We're seeing some blending there between the grays of the doors and the roof on the left side. We like what we have been calling back there in our discussions, the cooler colors on the right, the teals and the tans, I guess you could call it. So if I had a vote, mine would be for the cooler colors on the right, the teals and the tans.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
Just saying. We don't agree on much.
He's actually using reverse psychology. He wants the other one.
Why does a building have to be the same color at both ends?
Oh.
Because you're buying the roof that way, and most of that color is on the roof.
There's a lot of government places that share space, you know.
No,
This isn't unusual. And it's,
I know, but I'm just,
we could put the seal over one and the seal on the other.
you know, the roof is obviously, it gets silly if you're changing, but I'm thinking about
But even trim colors, like if you put red doors on the public works side and blue doors on the fire rescue side.
No, let me say this, you don't want to do red doors. In our research, we have found that the red doors in some departments are having to be polished and everything else because of fade rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tan doors on one side and gray doors on another side. If I showed you that, it just wouldn't sit right.
So I got Chief likes the teal, and Alan likes the red.
Who's getting built first?
He doesn't like the teal, let's put it that way.
He what?
He doesn't like the teal. You could put purple up there, I think, and I'd still go for it, but.
So we defer to who's getting built first?
Public Works.
Public Works.
Who's getting built first? Hello?
Yeah, your side's gonna need painted by the time you get this side.
Sorry.
Okay, so, gotta make sure I got this right. Chief, your color is teal or red?
You know something, and as I'm rethinking, if I'm getting a new fire station, whatever you guys choose, I'm all for it. The teal.
Why don't we do blue and red? That I can understand. Teal, what about azure instead of teal? You know,
There's a motion, why don't we just
Well,
vote
that,
on it if you don't?
Well, we're not ready to vote yet.
well, yeah, and well, Mike asked, he wanted to hear their thoughts. That was his discussion point.
Thank you for asking.
Is there any other discussion from up here?
How does this compare to what's in the neighborhood, you know, on Beachside? Which one looks more like what's in Cocoa Beach, what's in Melbourne Beach?
Melbourne Beach, from Melbourne Beach to Cocoa, you see buildings that are using a lot of the same colors, or a lot of, yeah, I wouldn't say that there's a specific character to the color of a particular building, and you'd say that there are dominant buildings in Melbourne Beach. The city complex in Melbourne Beach is kind of a dominant complex there, and there are what you would consider coastal colors in that space.
That settles it for me.
Any other comment up here?
You want to know how I'm going to vote before you get public opinion, or are we going to wait?
No, I'm going to go get public opinion. That's the only reason I'm asking if.
I'm going to vote for red, so whatever you.
Okay.
I'll tell you ahead of time, you know, make a comment about it.
I'll open up for public comment on the colors or color ban. I can't believe no one else from the fire department's going to stand up and.
Maybe they can write it on a piece of paper.
No one else has any other?
Well, I will say, at the end of the day, the point was made, and I have to agree. These guys live there 24/7. I'm there for 8 hours a day, and so if I'm there at night, I don't see it anyway, so.
And besides, if you're working and doing your job, Alan, you'll be inside, you won't see it anyhow.
I would add one more comment about this roof color versus that roof color. This one will have a higher solar reflectance index, so. Yeah. Sorry, not.
Slam dunk.
Somehow I knew that was coming.
what's the difference? What's the difference in the heat load?
I can't quantify that. I just know that that's a darker color, is a lighter color. It's going to have a higher SRI.
Aren't there, and this is, well, we got into it, aren't there coatings you can put on that basically really don't change the color, because it's really which, the infrared that you're wanting to reject, it's not in the visible.
That's true.
Are there coatings in?
Not that I'm aware of that for a roof coating. Glass of course has a very effective coating. It's a clear coating, but I'm not aware, and that is protected from the elements because it's on the inside face. I'm not aware of one that's.
Yeah, it might be interesting to so quick check on or something, because boy, you got a lot of square foot of metal there. But if you could reject 10% more or something of the heat component.
Solar panels someday.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah. Anyway, do we need to make sure that we know which colors we're voting on
state
again?
that. So, any more comment up here? There's nothing from, no discussion from the public.
Okay.
So I'll bring it back here. Any further discussion up here?
Just clarification that the motion is for the teal color.
That's what I was saying. The coastal warm teal color is how.
Which is the one that's.
I'm going to walk out of here and I'll be happy either way, but I have a preference. I want to tell you what my preference is, so that's what this is about, so.
Okay, is that it? No other? So the motion that we have is for the coastal warm teal colors. The motion was by Lorraine, second by John?
Yes.
Yes, correct?
Okay. I'm ready to vote.
All right. Grace?
Mike Chase,
No.
David Shector,
No.
Christopher Reed,
No.
John Fergus,
Yes.
Lorraine Gott,
Yes?
Wait, we got one more vote.
Yes.
we have a tie.
Doesn't pass.
Doesn't carry.
So the motion doesn't carry.
Correct.
Three of you step outside.
So at the point of we're at planning for this, does paint color really need to be specified now? Can we decide on the paint color when we get a little bit closer to what we know we're actually going to build, so that we can get a better feel for what's out there and perhaps another palette?
Yeah, like more red, like more squirts red.
I mean, we had some questions. What else is in the neighborhood? What does the school look like? Do we want to fit in, or do we want to be the tropical house, the one on the block?
It strikes me, the general layout, the landscape palette and stuff, those are things that are substantial. This is kind of, if I'd go with the other too, either way, I'm not hard over one way or the other. If we're all going to be hard over, it's going to be another 3-3 failed vote if we go the other way, which I doubt will be the case. But is it really that important, or do we just punt it back to staff and say, if the two occupants agree, that's the color?
They don't.
This is one of the few things we're here to decide.
Well, and so that brings up a point, because Liz, were we planning on having any further meetings really to discuss, or is this kind of where it was going to end at this point?
So you all have made approvals for the site plan, the landscaping, and the colors was the pretty much last approval. And so we were going to send them on their way to get the site plan done and break ground, basically, get started. So, we can have more meetings and more changes and more color discussions, because it is a great thing to talk about. It's a great facility, a lot of good ideas, but at some point we got to let them loose and get them started. And so,
Bernie's is on the fence.
Pardon me?
Fergus is on the fence here.
Fergus is on the fence. So if you want to defer the colors, and if you all like both colors, we can kind of come up with what we think as staff.
Yellow and purple.
How about if I make a motion that
That's you?
if we want to approve colors, can we make it, or could I make a motion to get past this that would stipulate that the colors, due to the discussion that we've had during this meeting today, the colors will be appointed by city staff, which the department heads are part of?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with. I just
Yeah.
don't see it.
Second.
I just, they can go up, they can look at the schools, they can decide if they want to do it red and white. I mean, gee whiz, so.
So we got a motion, and I believe we have a second.
Yes, I'll say, so we have a motion that says basically the colors portion of this
To be selected by
to be
staff.
selected by staff.
That is the
I'll
motion.
second
That is a motion. Lorraine seconded.
Yeah, as long as they don't pick that ugly gray.
All right. Lorraine seconded that, so is there any more discussion from the committee on that? Anybody else got something? I'll open up for public comment on that motion. Any other comments on that? Hearing none, bring it back to the committee. So the motion is to allow staff to choose those colors, and we have a second. No further discussion?
Well, the only comment I'll make is that if the populace hates it, it's not our fault.
True.
No pressure from John, ever.
It's your fault, Liz. Okay, Grace?
John Fergus,
Yes.
David Shector,
Yes.
Christopher Reed,
Yes.
here, Lorraine Gott,
Yes.
Mike Chase.
Yes.
Steve Osmer.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you,
That was
Mike.
fun.
Can I make a motion that we don't do the cladding?
Yeah, I was going to go through the list of what you guys just talked about for this
Okay.
item. Of course, we talked about the colors, the metal roof, the exterior being stucco, using block, no veneer, have the letters bigger and easier to read. Consider a monument sign for location. And then, again, the text down a little lower and larger.
Yeah, I don't think we made a formal decision on the clad, and I guess really, it's two things in there. Stucco over block, no cladding, I guess would be the appropriate, at least that's where I'm thinking.
That's what I had, no veneer and exterior stucco.
Yes.
Okay, do we need to do a motion on that, or is that already?
Let's do it.
understood?
Let's just,
If you
we're
want
doing
to,
everything else.
Let's go ahead and do a motion on it, and then we'll have it.
Because then when we get the colors, when they decide, then we'll have that in.
Nope.
Okay.
As a motion.
1 second, just so I can be clear. That gray portion on this horribly colored drawing right here, the gray portion, is that stucco?
Yes.
Down there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not too much of a fan of that. I feel like the cladding or that brick that you're proposing gives it more of a stately look. I mean, this is not Viera. Viera has all those like new pretty buildings and they're all stucco. And I just don't see the longevity,
Well-
like really robust.
Well, the
look.
problem with the cladding is that it tends to separate. If you go to the
Sure.
fire department, it'll, now, can they, I've seen our house, the masons did stucco, it's all stucco, but it looks like brick, just like that. They either stamp it or something? Can you do that instead of the cladding?
Yeah, it's called EFIS, and so it's an exterior insulation finish system. It's a foam.
No,
that-
no. The house was built in 64. It
Yeah,
is stucco.
and that stucco will have a metal lath behind it, and we want to avoid that in this building because that metal lath will rust and it will separate. And so, I've seen this, I believe I know what you're
No, this is
referring to.
stucco on block.
Stucco on block. And it has a scoring
What
texture to it.
yeah, I don't know how, I've seen it, it's very popular in the older homes that, the masons must have, maybe it's a lost art or something, they put a big wad and then they And,
There is a process with stucco where you can rot it, you can put a texture or brick look into it. I have to check code now, though, to see if the way it was done back then, even though it lasted more, if we're now required because of the thickness to have a lap inside of it still. Because that would be the only concern now is if anything.
it's the thickness then that may be the problem.
It could be. It's just something that I want to look into before promising that that would be applied without any metallic product in it that, cracks can form later and then you'd have the stuff rusting and potentially blowing.
Yeah, well, that's the same problem we have with the, with the veneers, so. Yeah, even if, now, can they do things like skip trowel and stuff and just a different texture?
Yeah, with stuccos, you can pick different textures, absolutely.
And I'm asking the question of the committee. I think, and I agree, I don't like to just stucco from floor to ceiling.
And then just make a paint color on it.
Yeah, and just put paint color, but if you did a texture, and if code says you can't do it so it looks like block or something, or some of them look like, chipped stone or something, they did all kinds of stuff. That even if they did skip trowel or something that put a texture that would, would set it off, give you look like a masonry base.
Differentiation.
Yeah.
So in other words, instead of the veneer, a suitable sub.
Sorry?
Instead of the veneer, a suitable sub.
Okay.
And in other words, what we're just saying is when we get to that bottom part, that
there's a textural
there's
change.
a textural change.
Yeah.
Something different. So that it's just not straight stucco from top to
I
bottom.
agree with that.
That way it does give it, I know the paint color's there, but it does give it a little something.
Gravitas.
Extra that's there.
So the motion would be stucco over block with some texture in that bottom, whatever it is.
Or texture, got it, differentiation.
Yeah, yeah. Does that make sense?
Right, and I think you understand what we're saying, right?
I do.
We want it to be different than the rest of the stuff.
Understood.
Right? Okay, so we have a motion.
A second.
No, what are we voting on?
The,
On the motion.
The bottom.
the top one, the top picture, what he had intended in that picture was to have a cladding that was over, in other words, it's little kind of fake bricks that are put up.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah,
bricks
yeah,
on
right.
on the fire station. The bottom one was just a paint color.
Right, so your motion is only addressing the cladding issue?
Yes.
Well, it's addressing, it's saying, he said the building was going to be block with stucco over block. And we don't want the cladding, but we do want some textural differentiation along that bottom segment, as though they were cladding. Does that make sense? Do you understand?
I understand that part of it. I thought we were trying to do kind of like a recap, so let me put this out there, and if you agree, somebody yell, "So move," okay? On this portion of it, the architectural plan would include colors as decided by staff, would have a metal roof, no cladding but stucco over block with texture, no veneer, possible monument sign, and the signs for fire rescue and public works that would be lower and bigger.
That's what you had.
Did I get it?
Is that the complete set? Does everybody agree that that's where we're going?
I think it's the superset.
Okay, I'll so move.
So move.
Lorraine, you going to second?
Oh, yeah, second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. The
Let's
long
go
list.
through your superset again.
That this is the committee's recommendations regarding the architectural plan.
Got it. Everybody, any other discussion of that? Is that good? All right, open for public comment? While she's doing that, I'll open up for public comment. Hearing none, I'll bring it back here.
Grace probably ought to read off that list.
Hear that, or, I know Liz has got it, so.
You have
Thank you,
it?
'cause I don't have it.
Yeah, I know Liz got it. She read everything and added that last part about the architectural end, so.
Does that make sense to everybody that's got to implement?
So is there any other discussion? No? Grace?
Mike Chase,
Yes.
David Shector,
Yes.
Chris Reed,
Yes.
Lorraine Gott,
Yes,
John Fergus,
Yes.
Steve Osmond.
Yes. So, next item is board discussion. Is there anything else the board needs to discuss or make note on?
One, now that we're done talking colors, the bollards by the doors. I'm not going to get into a big fuss about color on that or anything, but is there any reason not to do them like international orange or something like that, so they are visible, or does that cause aesthetic problems or
Well,
something?
in both cases, we did them as a bold color. We want drivers to be able to see them and be aware that they are there. And so a bold color is, I believe, a smart thing to do with those bollards.
I
And
mean,
they are,
they don't have them now.
We do not have them now.
And I can tell you from experience, I don't care if you paint them lime green, yellow, or orange,
We're going to hit them.
people are going to hit them. Well, here's the other part. If that ever comes to be a problem, they actually sell an overpiece that slides over the top that you can buy in yellow or orange. And you can slip it right over the existing poles. They make those their standard.
It's a non-issue.
Well, so two things. Number one, the bays are intended to design is that we drive through, so in essence, we shouldn't be backing in. And second to that is that we have a policy that whenever a truck backs up, there's somebody behind the truck. And third, we have cameras, backup cameras on the trucks. So,
I guarantee that Alan's group is still going to hit the bollards, no matter what you do.
Oh, well, come on over.
Oh, that's his place.
Look at the bay doors now.
That's what I said. I know for a fact that happens. I can tell you that it happens all the time.
Little bit
So,
scarred.
any other board discussion?
We'll be meeting again, or are we through with our,
We're going to move forward from all the recommendations. You guys have been great. I mean, from the start to today, this is where we needed to end up at.
excellent.
Approvals and get them moving.
So I assume unless we hear something else from staff, this would be, unless something major comes up.
Oh, and I'll definitely reconvene. I mean, because
From that
we
point.
did say up to 6 meetings, so, if something comes up that we need a look-see before we move forward, we'll definitely, any modification they have to make. Because they've still got to go get all their permits and the drainage and electrical and water lines, so,
There's a possibility.
So this is meeting number 3 or 4? 3, okay, so we can have up to 3 more meetings by the end of the year. But right now, we're not going to schedule any.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
see how they do. And we expect you all to be at the groundbreaking ceremony
Yes.
Yes.
at the end of the year.
All right, the last.
Red hats.
Red hats. Last agenda item.
No pressure.
red hats,
I just threw that in.
The last agenda item is
Move
approval
to
of the
approve
minutes.
meeting minutes to September 24th meeting.
Second?
I have a couple of corrections.
Oh, as corrected.
Second, I'm sorry.
Let's hold on, let's see what she has to say.
On the two motions that are indicated here, the first one says action was approve the conceptual plan with the option to adjust some of the items discussed. That was not the motion that we ended up with, because I asked John to specify what options he was talking about, and I made a second on that part of the amended portion. And we didn't vote twice on that same motion, so that amended motion doesn't even need to be there. And on the last page, it says the following residents address the committee. Lonnie Fergus, unless John has something to tell us, her name is Ronnie. And that-
Oh, I forgot about that, yes.
So it should be with an R rather than an L.
Okay. So you have a motion to accept
As
the minutes
amended.
as amended?
As amended.
Yeah.
And the second
Second.
as amended?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? No? Grace, when you're ready.
One moment, please.
Certainly.
When I was talking to Ron about it, I was going to bring it up and forgot.
Well, I'm certainly glad that Lorraine got that.
Well, that's her job on these committees. Make sure the minutes are right.
Make sure
I
that-
have a motion by David Shector, who's second.
John Ferguson.
Fergus.
Mike Chase?
Yes.
Lorraine Dodd?
Yes.
Chris Reed?
Yes.
Doug Fergus?
Yes.
And David Shector?
Yes.
And Steve Osmer?
Yes.
Grace, would you please thank Adam for these? This was a big help.
Will do.
All right. Thank you, Grace, for taking care of all this. I know it wasn't the easiest thing. We're not the easiest committee around here.
Oh, really?
Just for fun, I wonder, because we have Founder's Day coming up, I wonder if we could take a vote, just to tally of these two things at Founder's Day. That'd be fun.
Oh, boy. All right. I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Come up with that earlier, Chris.